When a company's ethics collapse, it rarely happens all at once. It happens in a series of small, seemingly inconsequential decisions made by people who told themselves it was just this once, or that everyone does it, or that the goal justified the means. Enron did not implode in a day. Wells Fargo did not open 2 million fake accounts because one person woke up one morning and decided to commit fraud. These disasters were built incrementally, decision by decision, by people who convinced themselves that what they were doing was either acceptable or unavoidable. Business ethics is not a compliance checkbox. It is the operating system of sustainable leadership, and every manager and employee who understands that has a competitive advantage over those who do not. This video is about how to practice ethics in the real world, not in a training manual. The first milestone is understanding the 3 levels of ethical obligation that every manager and employee operates within. The first level is legal compliance, the floor, not the ceiling. Laws tell you what you cannot do. Ethics tells you what you should do. Most of the genuinely difficult ethical decisions in business are not illegal, they are just wrong. The second level is organizational ethics, the stated values, codes of conduct, and policies that define acceptable behavior within your specific company. The third level is personal ethics, the individual moral framework each person brings to work. The challenge is that these 3 levels do not always align. When they conflict, and they will, the response to that conflict defines both the individual and the organization. The second milestone is developing practical frameworks for real-world ethical decision-making. Theory is easy. Pressure is where ethics get tested. 3 frameworks are most useful in business settings. The transparency test. Would you be comfortable if this decision appeared on the front page of a newspaper tomorrow morning? Not a favorable story, just a factual account. The stakeholder analysis. Who is affected by this decision? And have all of their interests, employees, customers, communities, been genuinely considered? The bright line principle. Establish in advance, before the pressure hits, the lines you will not cross, regardless of business justification. Professionals who articulate their bright lines before they are tested hold those lines at much higher rates than those who decide in the heat of the moment. The third milestone is creating an ethical culture, because ethics is not only a personal practice, it is a systemic one. Research by the Ethics and Compliance Initiative consistently demonstrates that employees in strong ethical cultures are significantly more likely to report misconduct and far less likely to feel pressure to compromise standards. Culture is built through visible leadership behavior. What leaders do when they think no one is watching sets the norm far more powerfully than any code of conduct. It is also built through psychological safety. The confidence that raising an ethical concern will not result in retaliation or being labeled as difficult. And it is built through consequence consistency. When ethical violations go unaddressed, the real policy of the organization is revealed, regardless of what the written one says. Here is the trap that catches even well-intentioned managers. They believe ethics is about the big dramatic moments, the whistleblowing scenario, the fraud discovery. In reality, ethical culture is made or broken in small moments. The meeting where a colleague is excluded from credit they deserve. The performance review, where an uncomfortable truth is softened into irrelevance. The quarterly target that gets hit through methods that technically comply, but clearly exploit. These micro decisions aggregate. Organizations where people rationalize small ethical compromises develop what behavioral economists call ethical fading. A gradual erosion of moral attentiveness that makes larger violations not just possible, but predictable. The professional who practices active ethics, who applies deliberate, consistent moral reasoning to ordinary decisions, is not just more trustworthy, they are more effective. They build stronger relationships, they avoid the reputational and legal exposure that compromised colleagues attract, and they create teams where people feel safe enough to be honest. And honest teams catch problems before problems become catastrophes. In business, ethics is not the opposite of ambition. It is the infrastructure that makes sustainable success possible. Here is your go-to. Identify one recent business decision, one you made or observed, and run it through the transparency test. Not to self-flagellate, but to sharpen the instinct. If it does not pass, explore why. That why is the most valuable ethical data you will encounter this week. Building ethical leadership also requires strong communication and the ability to have difficult conversations without defaulting to avoidance. That is exactly what the conflict resolution video in this series addresses. Make that your next stop. One area of business ethics that deserves special attention because of its frequency and its underappreciation is ethics in the context of power dynamics. Many of the most consequential ethical failures in organizations involve people using positional power, the authority of a job title or organizational role, to secure compliance, silence, or advantage that they could not achieve on a level playing field. Performance evaluations used to penalize employees who raised uncomfortable truths. Procurement processes manipulated to favor connected vendors. Credit claimed for work produced by others. These behaviors are common. They are rationalized in the moment. And they cause both immediate harm and long-term organizational damage that most organizations never attribute to their correct source. Managers who hold genuine ethical commitment have a specific responsibility here, to be especially vigilant about how their positional power affects the ethical choices available to the people around them. An employee who feels they cannot refuse an unreasonable request without jeopardizing their career is not making a free ethical choice. They are operating under coercion, even if the coercion is never made explicit. Creating the conditions for genuine ethical agency in the people around you is one of the most important and least discussed aspects of ethical leadership. The research on moral disengagement, pioneered by Albert Bandura, also provides an important lens here. Moral disengagement is the psychological process by which people who hold genuine ethical values convince themselves, in specific situations, that their behavior is actually acceptable. Common mechanisms include displacement of responsibility. I was just following instructions. Diffusion of responsibility. Everyone was doing it. And dehumanization of those harmed. They should have read the fine print. Understanding these mechanisms is not an academic exercise. It is a practical tool for catching the moment when one's own ethical reasoning is being corrupted by rationalization. The professional who can say, "I notice I'm using the language of moral disengagement right now," has a significant ethical advantage over the one who cannot. Thanks for watching. If you found this useful, hit like and subscribe to our channel for more practical insights. And if you're ready to go further, check out the next video on your screen.